Hi, in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to set up a C++ project using Visual Studio on Windows and how to save that project using Git. So first we're going to create a Git repository, and we do that by browsing to gitlab.uwe.ac.uk. You'll need to log in here the first time, so enter your UE username and password. Then click New Project. We're going to give the project a sensible name. I'm going to call it Practical 1. Then it's up to you whether you make this private or public, but do initialize it with a README file. Click Create Project. This creates the repository on our server, on our remote repository. We're going to take a clone of this by clicking here and then copying the URL for cloning with HTTPS. Then we're going to go to Source Tree, select File, Clone New, and then paste the URL in here. We need to store the repository in a sensible location, so we're going to select Browse, and then on the desktop here I've got a folder called SDA. I'm going to create a folder in here called Practical 1, the same as the repository, and then I'm going to select that folder and then clone into it. So this then downloads the repository and opens a source tree view for it. We'll come back to that shortly. If I go and have a look at what's inside the folder, we have two things. We have a Git folder, which may be hidden. If it is, you need to make hidden files visible on your Windows machine. So Google how to do that. And we also have a README file, which is in Markdown format, which is a markup language that's really easy to use. So Google Markdown and you'll find out how to add things to your README file should you want to document your projects. And when you save them and push them back to the server, all the contents of the README file is displayed down here on the bottom of your project page. Okay, so we've got the repository. Let's open Visual Studio. So we're using Visual Studio 2019. We're going to create a new project, and we're going to create a console app. So let's click Next. We're going to give it a name. Okay, so I'm being consistent here, and we're going to select the location. So I want to put it in the exact same folder as my Git repository. So I'm going to select that folder, click Create, and all of the files for the project are created and it will be opened in Visual Studio. So we have a really simple project here, just a single C++ file called practical1.cpp, and it's a hello world program. So if I build and run this, a window should appear and it should say hello. Indeed it does, look. And that's it. So what we now want to do is save the project to the Git repository, and we do that by committing the relevant files, and then we can save it on our remote server so it's backed up by what we call pushing. But there are a few things we need to do first to set that up. So let's look at source tree. Now source tree is going to be a view of our Git repository, and it will show us all of the files that have changed, and there's quite a few of them. And a lot of these we don't actually want to save because they are generated when the project builds. So if we put them into our repository, every time we rebuild, some if not all of these files will be updated. So we need to tell the Git repository to ignore them. Now we're going to have to go through here methodically to do that. So all debug folders we need to ignore. So what we do is the easiest way to do that is to right click and select ignore. Now we don't just want to ignore that file, we want to ignore the folder that it's in. So we're going to go and ignore that debug folder. So everything in that folder is going to be ignored. We also want to ignore this .vs folder. So I'm going to select ignore. I'm going to go to the vs folder and ignore that. And then we also want to ignore this debug folder here with the executable in it, because we can build that in Visual Studio each time. So we don't need to store it on the repository. So I'm going to ignore that. And then everything we are left with, we do want to save. So I'm going to select it all, and I'm going to move it into this area here, which is called the staging area, and it's ready to now commit. So I click commit. I'm going to add a comment, adding VS project, and that's now committed in my local repository, but it's not on the remote repository on the server. So I'm going to select push, and this will now upload the changes that I've made. So if we go back to this page here, and if we refresh, we should see a bunch of other files now. And if we look at the commit history, we can see the commit that I just made. Okay, so that's all good. I'm going to change my program now so that it says hello Tom. I'm going to check that it works. So I build and run, because I never want to commit code that doesn't build and work properly. That's all good. If we go back to source tree, it will change to show any changes that we've made. So we have the file that's changed. If we click on it, we can see the lines that have changed within that file. So again, I'm going to move that to the staging area. Update to say hello Tom. Let's put quotes around that. Now these commit messages are really important because they're messages to ourselves later on, so we can remember and see exactly what we changed. So I'm going to commit again, push it back to the server. And now we can view the commit history in two ways. We can view it here in source tree, okay, and here you can see every single commit. You can see the files that were added or changed. And if you click on those files, you can see within the files the changes that were made. We can also do this, now that I've pushed my changes to the server. If I refresh here, I can see my most recent commit. If I click on that, I can see everything that was changed. And that's it.